Welcome everyone to this new webinar, this interactive webinar where we have the chance to discuss with you how we can use placemaking for improving our built environment. This series of webinars, Cooperative Urban Futures, is brought to you by Utopian and European Knowledge Network, UKN. We developed this webinar series together to have a better impact and connect our audience and have a moment where we can think how we could improve our urban lives. We have today in the regie David and Giovanni. They will bring all your questions, comments, feedbacks into our discussion. So we invite you, please be active. Share with us your thoughts, and we would be very happy to react to your comments in this dialogue. My colleague, Livia from UKN, will introduce you to the topic and to the speakers of today. Enjoy the discussion and be a part of it. Thank you.
So welcome again, everyone, and thank you, Banor, for introducing our joint initiative indeed. My name is Livia, and I work as a policy and project officer at the UKN. But personally, I do have a background in architecture, and actually in my project, in my master, I really explore this topic of how to connect local governments with local community throughout space and throughout the use of tactical urbanism. So I'm really glad to explain again the objective of today's meeting, which is indeed to explore how we could use tactical urbanism, placemaking, and the street-level experimentation in order to bring forward more systemic sustainable transition at the city level. During today's session, we will also look specifically at the situation and the current context that the COVID-19 outbreak had brought forward. So we will look specifically at the challenges and the possibilities that this situation has brought forward for placemakers. And we will explore these challenges and possibilities with our speakers, also looking finally at a way in which these practices could be built up and eventually lead to transformative changes. So I would like to thank you, first of all, for being here, our guests, but also our speakers. And I would like to introduce you first, to introduce yourself to our guests. So I will start with Luca Bertolini, who is the first on my list. He is indeed a professor at the University of Amsterdam. His research is focusing specifically on how to support, let's say, this transition towards more human-centered, just cities, specifically by looking at the integration between transport and urban planning, but also at the enhancement of cross-disciplinary research and the indeed collaboration between academia and society, but also academia and policymaking. Then please, of course, feel free to add whatever you want on yourself later on when I will give you the floor. But then I would like to introduce also Julia Yaras. Also correct me if my pronunciation is wrong for your name. Julia is a researcher at the German Institute of Transport. And actually, she's also focusing on the promotion of active mobility, such as walking and cycling, but also on the transformation of public spaces in the specific context of Berlin through placemaking. The third speaker I would like to introduce to you is Anna Bradley. She's an urban researcher and project manager at STIPO. STIPO is an interdisciplinary organization based in the Netherlands. And Anna, more specifically, she's also part of the Placemaking Europe Secretariat, and she has been contributing to the JPI Urban Europe project, Place City. This brings me actually to our next speaker, who is Roland Krebs. He is an urbanist from Vienna, but he has also been involved in yeah, he has a great international experience, and he's also actually is working and he's involved in one of the Place City projects, so Place City Florisdorf from Vienna, exploring indeed collaborative practices in order to activate urban spaces. I guess he will also be talking about this project later on. We'll see. And then last but not least, we have Lior Steinberg, also urbanist and co-founder of Humankind. Humankind is another multidisciplinary, so we see already a key word arising, a multidisciplinary collective which aims at indeed at accelerating this transition towards what they call urban happiness for all, which is quite an interesting concept. So looking forward to hearing more about this. So let's say after this short round of introduction, which was quite formal in a way, we could say, I would really like to give our guests the possibility to understand a bit more in practice what your job means. So what you actually do as placemakers in your everyday life. So I would like to give you a possibility to share an anecdote, an event, to really understand what placemakers actually do and what is maybe a challenge that you have been experiencing as a placemaker in your everyday life. So I would like, maybe we can do the same round that I just did. So starting with Luca and then Julia, and you have indeed a couple of minutes, but just to make it as concrete as possible.
Yes, thanks. Thank you also for bringing together this beautiful set of people. Let me start saying that, yeah, I would not dare to call myself a placemaker. I think the real placemakers are those that are out there doing stuff, and maybe some of the people here are real placemakers. That's too much an honor would be for me. But what I hope to do from my position is to generate insights that might help enable placemakers in doing what they do and hopefully doing it better. And particularly what I'm particularly interested at this point also in my professional life is how to help placemaking initiatives have citywide impacts. So not remain at the sort of one-off kind of impact that they often have. An example I'm working quite a lot with is, think of tactical urban intervention in city streets. A lot of they're incredibly exciting and impactful, but often it remains there. It does not change the city. So how could that be different? So that's my one focus. And maybe as an anecdote, let me say this then. I've been living for 25 years actually now in a car-free neighborhood in Amsterdam, which is something I incredibly enjoyed. My kids grew up there. I had my whole life there, and I still do not understand why there are so few of these places in Amsterdam anywhere in the world. So understanding why not, but also trying to get through the message that this could be a much better life for many of us. It's one challenge, and in that sense I use my work, but I also use my personal life as a weapon in this fight.
Thank you, Luca. I think the example of the neighborhood was super pragmatic, so you centered the point. So maybe, Julia, if you could tell us a bit, just share one anecdote, something.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also to discuss this very interesting and relevant topic. And as you already said in the introduction round, I'm a researcher and I'm working with transformative research. So for me, it's also important to generate insights about how we can shape cities and how we can make transportation healthier and also sustainable. But I do that in a very transformative way, so with transformative research, and we are also doing projects with placemaking, and I can show you one picture. I will share my screen. So what we did last fall was, I think you can now see this crossroad. It's one area in Berlin, just like a normal crossroad in a living environment, and we transformed this crossroad into a city square, which you can see here on that picture, for 5 weeks. And that was a very interesting experience also for us as a research institute to initiate this change on the one hand, but then also to generate scientific insights and also do that in a neutral and open-ended way. And I think that's also one of the main challenges, that when we as researchers are in this new role of transformative research, that we generate results and insights, and this is open-ended. But on the other side, we also initiate something and we go outside and create a change. And sometimes it's difficult also to communicate to everyone that we juggle with different stakeholders like the administration, the civil society, and also research, which is for the most part not used to this transformative character. So I learned that it's very important to really make clear that the results are neutral and open-ended, even if I, as a researcher, initiate some kind of change in the urban structure, especially with such an emotional topic as the transportation transition.
Thank you, Julie, also for sharing this image, because I think it's in the end there is nothing more tangible than looking really at what you did. And maybe I'd like to jump a few of the speakers, and we can round off this round with Lior, who was who was actually the last one that I presented, so we can just round off from the other way. And I would like to ask you to share one of your anecdotes, and then I'm sure the other speakers will have plenty of opportunities during the discussion. So please, Lior.
Sorry everybody that I jumped over all the queue. I don't know how it happened, but thanks.
No, it was just a decision because of time management.
No problem. Yes, I will keep it short. Well, my anecdote, I guess, is being asked as I'm a practicing urban planner. I mean, that's what we do. I'm getting requests by cities or developers or city managers to do placemaking. And I think that the biggest problem with the world placemaking is that everybody has their own opinion on what it is. I'm afraid that by clients, it means too much, make something nice on the street, so everybody will forget how terrible it is. I'm afraid it's sort of like this tactical urbanism intervention, colorful thing. That's what people believe, and that's why I also have a problem calling myself placemaker. I don't see myself as a placemaker, at least as what most people understand placemaking is. I do like the idea of co-creation with residents, with creating places with a lot of functions. But as long as it is understood by most cities as just colorful intervention, I think it doesn't have the power to really create transformation. And therefore, I prefer tactical urbanism. I prefer urban experiments, urban interventions, but not placemaking per se.
Wonderful, Lior. Thank you. I think I have finally a placemaker with us. Anna, would you like to share with us an anecdote why you started doing what you are doing, and where do you think do we have to improve our cities? What are the challenges? Are there opportunities? How do you see it?
Yeah, thanks, Bahner, and it's a nice combination going right after Lior. I'm going to share my screen to show you an intervention that happened in Groenland, Oslo, under the Place City project. That's the project I've been working on the past couple of years. And I got involved in this specifically to create placemaking tools and models, specifically like a financial foundation behind a placemaking project, not necessarily as the goal in itself, but more so as a ability to then have this social value creation and being able to work with the community on the long term, having that financial backbone to allow us to do that. And I think that really goes towards a bit about what Lior was saying, and that I do see a huge challenge here with moving beyond the supporters of placemaking and getting to, I guess, the naysayers or the people that see it more as place branding, as, you know, a sticker to put on as oh yeah, we involve the community, check, it's a good development then. But really wanting to make sure that placemaking is considered as a process over the long term with iterative steps that go all the way from these temporary interventions that look very pretty, you know, the umbrellas, the murals, that's wonderful. But we also have to be wary about gentrification mechanisms, making sure that we're inclusive, really deeply involving the community, and having these long-term visions that empower the community and put them at the forefront for being their own place managers and having this financial local economy behind it as well. So it's a big challenge, but I think collectively we're ready for it.
Wonderful, Anna. Thank you very much. Roland, are you a placemaker? How do you deal with city problems, and do you see opportunities to scale up?
I don't know how you will call placemaking in the next 5 years. I have no idea. I think I'm an urban planner and I work for municipalities and not so much for private companies. We have a small studio for urbanism, architecture, and urban planning. It's called Super Wien, and we are located in Wien. That's a good coincidence. And we came to placemaking in 2016, where we made an intervention at the World Urban Forum Habitat Free conference in Quito, where we built a placemaking tool, an open stage, and we tried out with the for the forum. But in reality, afterwards, the community came to us and said, can we have this? Can we keep it? Because we want to activate our neighborhood with that. And that was it made the click. It said, oh, I think these guys, they just like this kind of interaction with the neighbors and the residents, and with also with the entrepreneurs that also do something with it. And we're doing all our projects with a dialogue-oriented planning approach. And we added the placemaking for our engaging and testing ideas in the public realm, and we were very fortunate that we, together with Anna, and with our friends from Nabolag Saga in Oslo, we were able to do one research project, and a side product was the Placemaking Europe movement that was also created at the same time. And it's, I think both things work perfectly well. The pandemic came in between, but it didn't stop us, because what we tried to do was create strategies, local strategies with co-creation with the locals. In a district in Vienna, an old centrality that has a certain degree of decay, and we are trying to do an urban regeneration concept through the placemaking process. And as Anna told us, how important sustainable models, economic models are, we are not intending to do some short-term thing, but to create a longer-term vision. So we try to find our local allies that they actually do the placemaking, and we are only helping them with the design and with the ideas. And I can also share a screen if you like about. Oh, where is it? It's not here. I cannot share it because I lost my screen. But it is it is a tool where it's an open stage. It's movable. It's a movable stage that enables placemaking in the public space through events. That people made when they call a call for projects and events, and they are actually people from the residents and neighbors. They are adding their values to this placemaking project. So it's a quite good project.
Thank you, Roland. We give you some time to find your pictures. I'd like to go back to Luca. You heard Roland. He has international projects in South America and in Africa and so on. And you said you are doing research. Where do you see the possibilities, opportunities, and the challenges in our cities? What has to be changed that we all can have for a lifelong car-free neighborhoods?
Yeah, I like how you end up your question, because I mean, I will go back to this idea of what I'm particularly interested in is how to link experiments. I like to use the word experiments for this to citywide policies, citywide transformation processes. And in that perspective, two things are important. One, this experiment should challenge the wider context. Should not just be a nice thing, like Lior said, or a one-off experience, but really a prefiguration of a different way of organizing our life as city. And on the other hand, city policies, a wider process should be open or made open to adapt as a result of these experiments. And learning here is a crucial word. Maybe there'll be a chance to elaborate on this later. But why is it crucial? Because to me, it's more than upscaling in any simple way, or making what is temporary permanent. It's really about triggering a different organization of cities. And let me use the example of street experiments. It's not just making a street nice and certainly or more livable. It's certainly and also not just for 5 weeks. It's really challenging the car-centric logic, the traffic dominated way of designing, regulating, and using our public spaces. But if you do that, if you really think as an experiment of a totally different way of organizing, designing public space, there is so much we have to learn that we don't know. We have to organize our lives in different ways. We have to run our business in different ways. So if the ambition is system-wide change, I mean, most of all, I think we should learn from these experiments.
Thank you very much. We have guests from Den Haag and from Amsterdam in social media. Hi. Please feel free to also pose your questions. Our speakers are very happy to hear your view on this. Lior, what do you think about what Luca explained us?
Yeah, I love the way he put it. I totally agree. Especially, I mean, I think we all proved that making an intervention in short term is possible. So you can make wonderful things, and cities have been doing them. I think many cities have been doing them just to get some press, and then unfortunately a lot of things are going back to the way they used to be. So I think we've already proved that we can make the intervention. And to build up on what Luca just said, I can share very quickly, which I think, I mean, I've been doing a lot of tactical urbanism experiments. Most of them have been badly failing, but very gracefully. And this is an example of, I would say, a quick intervention that worked. And this is why I liked it. I hope you see the screen. But this is a square in Tel Aviv, and it's called Basil Square, and it was full of cars. And the city, when Corona started, just closed it. And they got a lot of backlash. because they closed it for cars, but still nothing happened there. So a lot of people were angry that they don't have parking. And we very quickly, within a month, we created some sort of a picture that always looks very nice and sunny, and also make the intervention itself. So I think you can see in the pictures, we made the intervention itself. It got very full, very, very full, very quickly. It looked even more full than the illustration. And the reason I show it is not because it's a success. Well, of course, I'm happy to show a successful project, but to show that sometimes those interventions, those experiments can support an idea that the city had. The city decided that they will have a closed square, but they didn't. So they thought about it from a mobility point of view. They knew it's possible in terms of traffic flows, but not in terms of public space. And this sort of experiment, quite cheap intervention, helped to connect all those, basically helped to connect all those ideas, policies from different places from the municipality into one intervention. So yeah, that just wanted to add that interventions, placemaking can help if they really connect the policies and the directions the city is going to.
Thank you, Lior. You got a follow-up question. Raquel Santos is asking, what about failed projects? What can we learn about them?
Oh, wow. Do we have an hour?
Have one.
I mean, do I need to answer or someone else has an answer?
As you wish. You can react to that. Raquel, thank you very much for the question. If you want to react, you can.
Yeah, I can do it in 30 seconds and then Roland says it. I mean, look, the problem is that when you get assignment from the municipality, it cannot fail. I mean, that's not how municipalities work. They give you an assignment, it should work out. So it is very, very important to define what is the assignment. And if the assignment is defined as an experiment and the person who gives you the assignment is open for different results, then it works. But if you define something as we're going to do an intervention and everybody's going to be happy, you're going to fail. And this is how we sold in the beginning, maybe interventions, but that's not how it works.
Thank you very much. Julia, we heard mobility and we heard also that we can plan for long term. And I think this is very important when we talk about mobility, because we talk about patterns, how we move. What are your thoughts or experience in this regards? How can we change our cities for the better?
Yeah, thank you. And I can also totally relate to what Lior was saying about Tel Aviv. When he said that it's really important to show what's possible on the space, just to close it for cars and then nothing happens. Sometimes that can be difficult because it's easier to see what's possible in this public space. And I think, often when we live in very car-oriented cities, we can't really imagine that another urban life is possible. So I think that's really important for experiments to just show maybe on a smaller scale that in the same city or in your neighborhood, another like urban life is possible. And then also super important, the opinion of those experiments, because we are doing a few experiments or transformations right now in Berlin. Also due to the pandemic, but I can talk about this maybe also later. But what we experienced is that it really depends on the neighborhood, how the population's opinion is about this intervention or experiment. And we always see critical opinions. That's totally normal, and they should be taken seriously. And we also see very frequent concerns like parking space and also more noise due to people who are staying in the public space. So these concerns are very frequent, and it's important to take them seriously. But then also we see that the critics normally have the loudest voices, and that other groups, such as children, but also other, maybe the elderly, they are often underrepresented in urban planning or also in these kinds of interventions. So, for example, in one project, we had a butyric acid attack from an opponent. And such an extreme example, of course, scares also some people away. And here we really need to be clear that this is a single opinion. And we also had lots of friendly messages from parents and children who used that square on a daily basis. But these opinions then sometimes seem less striking in comparison. So it's definitely important to take criticism and concern seriously, and also to not have a certain result that you want to have in the end about this intervention. But it's also very important to not over-interpreting these criticism or critical opinions.
Thank you very much, Julia. I think it comes a little bit down to how people behave, no matter if they are in the administration, who then invite placemakers or urban planners to do projects, but also a lot what people do. Of course, we will always have the black sheep, which will have a lot of prominence in the media. But how can we convince people, regular citizens, to feel empowered, to take over, to inhabit, to use the public space? Anna, would you like to share with us your experience in this and your opinion? How can we do that in a sustainable way?
Yeah, thanks, Bahadur. So to invite everyone to use the public space in a really inclusive and sustainable way, it's really important that your communications are also inclusive. So it's not going to be the best idea to only put up something in one language for a community in a city. You want to make sure that you're getting to the people that are maybe not speaking that language, or maybe are illiterate. So you have to think about more creative ideas, such as posting in different languages, knocking door to door, but then also making sure that your team is also inclusive and representational of all different types of identities. In the end, going in to a community, you are an outsider. So you really need to make sure that you recognize the local as expert, and you're really using that deep empathic listening to the community. And then in terms of connecting to all different types of disciplines in a project, Lior spoke about it a little bit, talking about that connection, about speaking the right language for the municipality, about how, as a public space project, and for the municipality, the goal was the traffic. So when you go into these moments where you want to bring allies on board that can help you reach other target audiences and get more people into the space to feel included, it's important that you think about the right language as well, not necessarily the actual language, but the words you're using. Does this definition actually mean the same for them that it does for you?
Thank you very much, Anna. Actually, I do have a question for Lior, because you said something that I wrote down and it's still in my head. So I would like to ask you to explain it a bit further, and also to ask other speakers' reaction on this, because you said that the assignment from municipalities can fail. And this is quite an interesting statement, because you compared it with your own ambitions, and your own ambition was, I want to make everyone happy. So I was wondering, what is the element that create a distinction between your ambition and the one of the municipalities, and also compared to what Anna was just saying about the necessity of creating this shared way of communicating, this shared language. So is there a way in which we can, let's say, achieve, maybe it's a bit visionary or dreamy, but is there a way in which we can say that it's a shared assignment, and it's not just an assignment from the municipalities can fail, but it's like maybe municipalities and communities, or?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are based in Rotterdam and working with a local municipality here, and many of them, I mean, most of them understand it. The people we work with, they know that an experiment is something that cannot fail, because it just leads to 2 or 3 or 4 options. it worked, it didn't work. The problem is that many times the expectation, especially when we talk about placemaking or tactical urbanism, is that we will make some sort of intervention and it will just work. And work means that there will be a lot of happy people, like in the pictures. And that's where I believe, and I see a lot of municipalities changing their minds, I guess also in Vienna and in Tel Aviv definitely, is that we, basically, I'm never, okay, let me put it that way. I'm never worried when I work in a great city that has the potential that my project will fail. I know that if you remove a parking space and put places to sit, it will work because great cities just need more space. But if you go to a terrible neighborhood with not mixed use and not pedestrians, and they give you a parking lot and tell you make it a place, it will just fail unless you redefine the assignment to let's experiment with somewhere else. Let's see if it can be housing. Let's discover something. But Roland is pointing, so maybe you have something smarter to say.
No, it's
the floor is yours.
You're muted.
Yeah, it's brilliant, Lior, because I had the same experience in our project, our Place City project. There were students from the University of TU Wien, and they were implementing a parklet in Floridsdorf. And Floridsdorf is not a very nice neighborhood, I would say. It's very nice, but it's not a hipster neighborhood, yeah. And the parklet is something what people perceive as a very ugly thing, and they don't want to see it. They say, you take away a parking lot from us, yeah, and not see a cool intervention. And then we spoke to the district mayor, and he said this project failed because it was not rooted in the society, and there was not enough effort made to create the trust between the users and the designers, I would say. So it failed because they just brought in a project that was not suitable for the place. And I think that is what you meant also, Lior, right? That it has to be the right context. And I think any placemaking project is not well done if it's not done in a planned way. I mean, with a planning process. That's my opinion here.
Roland, do you see any differences in mentality or culture or approach to public space between Europe and, let's say, Americas or Africa? Because you are working so internationally, I wonder if in other continents the challenges are similar, or is it really specific to European context what we are discussing now?
I think in Latin America it's much easier actually to do something like this, because people are more in the streets and they are doing more things outside. Viennese people stay inside, and I think that placemaking is hard to do here, because everybody's just questioning what you're doing here and why, and which money is that, and where did the funds come from? So I mean, you could easily set up a bar in Vienna and do a bar in the public space. It's easy, but to do a proper placemaking project is not that easy in Austria, I think. I think that depends on the society. I think in Latin America, doing that in Buenos Aires is much easier.
Luca, what do you think? Or how is it with research and bringing people together and activate them? Do you have other insights than discussed so far?
No, but I wanted to elaborate further. I think there were some very important discussions, especially the last comments where we started discussing about failure, not about as a bad thing, but as actually a good thing, because a way to learn, to become much more nuanced, what could work, where, with whom, and how we should adapt things, etc., etc. So I think yes, we could look at these experiments as a way, to open up the imagination, and if and be, very happy if people are happy, and even more happy if something that is temporary becomes permanent. But we should not stop there. I think we are really not realizing the full potential if we stop there, because the interesting question that these experiments ask is, why is not the real interesting question is, why is not the whole city like this? It's not why is not this street not like this? Why is not the whole city like this? And of course, if that's the question they ask, there are big things here. The city is not like this because we move around the way we move around, because goods are delivered the way they're delivered, etc., etc., etc. So it's a discussion at that level that needs to be made. So in that sense, maybe we should be not just open to failure, but maybe also look for failure, because then only we learn. Of course, I'm aware there is a paradox here, because if you go too far, you could have a backlash that people so much hate it that you could never do it again. So it's a fine line. I realize it, but we should not be happy just because something was a success. People were happy because if means that maybe we have not challenged the system strong enough.
One more follow-up question to you, Luca. How can we have more pedestrian spaces in the suburbs? Are open streets initiatives a possible solution? Parklets? How can we show the importance of these spaces? Again, from Raquel, and we also heard that Estación de Té project in Lisbon is very beautiful made. Would you like to react on that before we?
Yes, I think Lior were already saying some important things here, because there are some contexts where these things are so obvious that they work even without the need to do it to be particularly smart. Especially mixed use neighborhoods, dense and so forth. But indeed, what is the perspective in suburbs, low density, little mixing? I think that, let me see two things. On one hand, I think this is a challenge for us, working, thinking about placemaking, doing it, to really broaden up the kind of things that can be done. Maybe the kind of things we are doing, if we just literally try and apply them in all contexts, they will not work. And actually, that's also what we're learning. But that doesn't mean to me that even in those contexts, there are not limits or problems to the kind of car-centric logic. And I think that the people there are just as much in need of rich public spaces, places where kids can play outside, where can interact with their neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. I think those needs are very human needs are there too, but maybe the way to open up to those needs in those other contexts is less literally the kind of play street we do in a dense, mixed urban neighborhood. So maybe that's the challenge of our imagination, to figure out experiments that are meaningful in those different contexts.
Thank you very much, Luca. We have also a question from Saskia, but we will take that to the next round. I just would like to round up the first round. Maybe you saw during the lockdown that a lot of cities, and first of all, the Italian cities, were singing from their balconies, making music together. And in Vienna, we had people yelling on the streets, Ruhe, which means be silent. So there is a huge difference in culture. But situations like pandemics force us to react to this current situation anyway, no matter what our culture is. And I would like to give the word to Livia so she can introduce you to the next round.
Yes, thank you, Bahanur. Thank you also, for all your intervention for this first round. And indeed, in this second round, we would like to focus a bit more on the pandemic and the context of the recovery, actually, from the pandemic. And we would like to ask you, indeed, how has the pandemic affected these practices that we have been exploring till now? So, placemaking or experimental urbanism or, tactical urbanism or this kind of example that we have that we actually have seen from your examples and from your practices. So we would like to hear a bit from you. How have you been experiencing these, and how do you think, what role should these practices play towards a more just green recovery in the future, actually? So I would just open the floor if anyone wants to. Or maybe, yes, okay, Lior, I see.
Yeah, I look, the way I see it is that when there is a crisis, the ones that are ready with a solution will normally be able to affect. So a little bit like a shock doctrine, right? Like people have been talking about cycling. We already held all the plans, we held all the master plans. It's just nothing happened, and then the crisis, like a new crisis started, and the professionals with the bike lanes and the pop-up bike lanes were just ready with a solution. So the solution was taken. What I'm afraid, and I already see it now, you see it in Berlin, you see it in Italy. I saw some pictures, is that those bike lanes are being reversed. Pop-up bike lanes are being just closed down. So it almost starts to feel like that the interventions that worked really well in some cities are being just reversed, because we are very, very, very quickly back to the old normal. New normal is not something that exists, in my opinion, and I'm really afraid that maybe some things were proven, but I don't see how it adds to a sustainable change, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you, Lior. And indeed, you're creating again this link with the systemic change, because for now, until now, we have been talking about the small intervention and that it's easy in a way to show the successes, because indeed it's colorful, it attracts attention, but then how can we actually scale this intervention up? And we saw that during the pandemic, indeed, the reaction from the communities and the municipalities as well. They were really quick and they reacted suddenly just to support their communities and their citizens. But how are we going to take this effort forwards in the future in order to recover from this crisis? And maybe I would like also to direct this question to you, Julia, as you were mentioning, because you touched upon something before, and indeed talking about what to show, and that indeed you just presented this great example of the cities, but then you were also saying that to show and to present what happened behind the curtains is quite complex. So I would also like to ask you, how can we maybe bring this a bit more to the front in order to grow also for the future, and to maybe this could seen as this is a key towards a more systemic change? How do you see this?
Yeah, and I think I can also draw a positive picture, at least for Berlin, what happened during the pandemic. Because there were, especially in the district of Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg, several pop-up bike lanes during the pandemic, and now they are consolidated. So most of the bike lanes that were put on the street in a very fast process that we haven't seen at all like this before in urban planning in Berlin, they are still there, and now they are structurally consolidated. And it's true that the plans for those bike lanes were already there. So the idea was to have those bike lanes, but I think it's a very special case that we have those pop-up bike lanes now, and also that they are structurally consolidated. And just a few weeks ago, the district also got the German cycling award for this, and of course also lots of attention worldwide. And then we also saw some other projects that were not at all planned beforehand. I think this really shows how maybe also a crisis like this really makes clear that we need healthy mobility, that it was so important. Everyone was focused on the living environment and on the neighborhoods, and it was really important to also have this physical activity because we were so blocked in our neighborhood. And so in addition to those pop-up bike lanes, there were play streets starting last summer. And every Sunday in the afternoon, people from the neighborhood could meet there, and children played on the streets. And this only worked also with this interface of the administration, the civil society, and research, because volunteers from the neighborhood were supervising the play streets, and they were definitely needed because the administration could have not enabled those play streets by themselves. And now we see that some of the play streets are converted in city squares or pedestrian zones. So also here we see some kind of consolidation. So for Berlin, in general, I think we really see again how important it is to promote physical activity and walking and cycling, and also the need for spending more time in public spaces was very crucial during the pandemic. But then, of course, also this is focused in some neighborhoods of Berlin, and of course it's not all over the whole city. But what we've seen during the last year so far, we can say that this gives some impulses for the next steps of infrastructure.
Thank you, Julia. You got a question from Federici. She would like to know about the placemaking in Berlin during the pandemic. I think you answered it already, but if you would like to react on the question, please feel free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I already said was the pop-up bike lanes we had and which are consolidated now, then the play streets, and then there was also one group evolving. So, and I also help in building this group. It's an interface between the administration, research, and the civil society. And we had some prototypes. It's some kind of study which is also published in these days. And besides the pop-up bike lanes and the play streets, we introduced prototypes such as terraces on parking lots, so that restaurants but also social projects can take the space to also have the hygiene restrictions, so to have more sitting area, for example, on a parking space. And then we also suggested for child care, like kindergarten, to also have some kind of space on the street so that children can be outside, also in some kind of pop-up infrastructure.
Thank you, Julia. I actually would like to bring the same question to Anna. If indeed the pandemic, like how did it change or affected the street experiments you were involved in? Because as we learned from Julia, indeed the pandemic has also brought forward new needs of the community, of the society, of using public spaces also in a different way. So did you had maybe to change, to shift your approach, or how did you manage to integrate these new needs emerging from the communities? And now, another question. And now, actually, did you get to learn these new needs from them? Thank you.
Thanks. Definitely, we had to adapt and change our project plans. The moment when we were going into the implementation was really right when we went into lockdown. So something that we adapted with was more digital placemaking tools. We couldn't see people in public. And also there was this increased fear naturally of being out in public, even if the regulations and the rules didn't necessarily mean they couldn't. So specifically in Oslo, Nabolagshager created a tool all about creating a digital dinner. And so it was this hybrid tool that the locals were able to go and pick up excess produce and then connect digitally online to create and eat a dinner all together. So, of course, over the last year and a half, we've really learned from the pandemic. Well, not necessarily learned, but really understood more importantly that the daily life on the neighborhood level is just paramount to human daily life and daily quality. So really needing to make sure that that support and local connection was still there, even though physically it wasn't possible. So tapping more into digital tools. And I also think out of this pandemic, we've learned certainly that inhabitants of the city are hit very differently. Specifically, mixed use areas aren't accessible for everybody. So people that live in the periphery, how can they access amenities? And are they even able to work remotely? Many are not. So I think we've really learned that we have to collaborate more and have more resilient policy in our cities to make sure that the vulnerable are more protected. And I think this contributes to the idea that placemaking is not an isolated silo. It is something that's very much overlapping with all different disciplines and tapping into our creative bureaucrats and place-led development, working with area development.
Thank you, Anna. And indeed, you got a follow-up question from the audience, and it's a bit also in line with my really last question that I asked you. Let's say the cue of my question, because they are asking you, like, have you been actually in dialogue with placemakers? How can they have a sustainable contribution to the challenges we discussed? So. How do you make sure that everything is connected and you're working towards the same objective as well?
Yeah, thanks. And thank you, Sarah. It's definitely a challenge to make sure that not only the intervention, the research, the deep listening is connected, but also the reflections about what happened and how we can improve. So I think the biggest challenge that we have is turning implicit great practices that are coming from the community into something that is a tool that others can also tap into and use for the better. So having the community share their great practices, that would be something that would be super helpful, but also it's not an intuitive step. So it would be on the placemakers as well to help guide and recognize these really wonderful practices into tools. And specifically for the aftermath of the tools would be the reflection process. So not only like letting this tool and application live on its own, but then giving a connection back to the user and the tool creator. That way we can learn these contextual applications, and maybe it didn't quite work in Berlin and in the way that it was intended to from the author coming from Vienna. But we can definitely learn and understand more contextually the situation on the ground there.
Thank you very much, Anna. Actually, we still have one question left from the first round from Saskia, and I would like to, indeed, it was directed to Luca, if I'm not mistaken, who was reflecting on the unpredictability and of the experimentation and of the projects. And maybe in this context also, we are talking about an outbreak of a pandemic that was certainly unpredictable. So I would like to ask you, Luca, what do you think, on behalf of Saskia, of course, thank you for that question. What do you think architects, designers, and planners can actually learn from the unpredictability of the project? And if it's true that every project is unique on its own, what are the generalities that can be considered as take-home messages and that we can learn from?
Well, I think the short answer is that and I think the pandemic and also what my fellow panelists are saying is beautifully illustrating that is unpredictable things are above all an incredible opportunity to learn, because you are forced to do things different. For instance, in this case, we have been forced to live much more localized, depend more also on the digital world, like we are doing now. We have been forced to use differently public space. And this has shown, but not just because we talk about it or we see numbers about it, but because we experience new possibilities, but also limitations, differences from, for instance, neighborhoods where there are parks people can go and have a walk, neighborhoods where there are no such things, or people that can or cannot access this possibility. So it has made many things. What is important has made us much more aware. So in that sense, and that you could say of any unpredictable thing that happens, but the key point here is that change will not happen by itself. And Lior said, I see things going back to normal. On the other hand, we have Julia saying, well, in Berlin, things seems to be changing as a result of that learning that such an unpredictable thing happened. So I think that understanding this is a learning opportunity, but also building on that, which means bringing it in the public debate, for looking for a connection to citywide policies. These are also roles that people like us could have, but certainly not alone. That's why the public debate and engaging with citizens it's so important. But in this sense, I think purely from a researcher point of view, in a bit detached, just understanding why in some places things are changing, why in others are not. I mean, this is also an incredible case study, but maybe here is a bit the academic in me talking. This, I don't think, make us not responsible to also be active in the context where we happen to be and really try to get that learning, going on, be shared, etc., and impact in the end policies.
Thank you very much, Luca. Federici asks also, how can we enable, how can we support enablers, and how can we fight barriers to systemic street level change? And you already elaborated a bit on that. I want to also ask the question, what can be done specifically by citizens, by practitioners like placemakers, urban planners? We had also the question about designers. And what can we request from decision makers? I think that the reason why we are having this debate online, digital, available for everyone, is exactly that we want to exchange. But what exactly is it? What can we do, no matter what our role is?
Yeah, well, I think two things, and maybe one is it's happening, or we know, which is, just doing these things, even if they are temporary, they really can and do open up the imagination. So these are opportunities where, citizens can experience, which is much more valuable than talking about it, of hearing about it. What would that be? Living in a street which is different. But I think that the second thing we have to do is also, and here is a bit of a different thing, dig into why is it not like this? What are the barriers, which might be at a different level in the institutions, in routine ways of doing things, maybe in regulations, or also how things are organized. So trying to understand that, exposing that, and having a discussion about the barriers to change, I think is as important as activating the imagination, was showing, giving the experience of what a different world could be. And we need really to do both.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the same question also to Roland. You live in Vienna, you have project in Vienna, and placemaking is also not a new thing, and you had also your experience with the Place City project. What are the specific barriers, challenges, which make it difficult that we have active citizens to experiment and to try out new things?
Yeah, I think that the people are not getting enough space to do that experiments. I mean, everybody would ask, how should I do something? I mean, and this, yeah, that's one of the problems, or that, well, that's maybe this one of the takeaways from our project from Place City, is that we asked the question how the municipality could be a facilitator for placemaking and include people actively in the development of projects or activities in the public space. And there are a lot of tools that are actually working pretty well. For example, the development of parklets. So there's a special funding in the city of Vienna. So everybody could participate in a call and create the parklet. And is funded by maximum 3,000 euros. And a lot of people are doing that actually. And that's, I think it's one of the steps that are already made. But through this Place City project, we did one step further. So we are doing this planning process of an urban regeneration process, and we actively invite people to participate. And these are the normal people. So, and for example, we organized an open call, ask people, what would you like to do? And could be anything. And they just, they come with ideas. They want to do a workshop about herbs in, I don't know, and want to invite people. And this workshop actually really happened 2 days ago. Now I can share my screen and show you, because I found my I found my presentation, and so the presentation, it's just a, do you see it? Yeah. So that's our tool that we used in the public space. And this is the herbs workshop with this lady that is doing a very reduced workshop for a limited amount of people, because they were not more allowed than 10. It's very strict still. But well, this is one of these engagements between residents and the public project through a placemaking. And I think that is quite interesting, where the municipality converts into a creative bureaucracy and enables this kind of participation.
Thank you very much, Roland. And we have time actually maybe for a last question to round off this second round about focus a bit more on the pandemic. Actually, maybe following these lines on barriers hindering systemic change, I also would like to direct a question to Lior. And I would like to ask you, in your experience, which are these barriers that are hindering systemic change? And also maybe in relation to what Roland was just showing to us, so the importance of including citizens and make sure that there is actually citizen participation. I would also like to link to a comment that Anna actually made in the very beginning, and she was saying that we don't need just to involve citizens or at the very first stage or at the early stage of this initiative, but we should make sure that they would be involved throughout the process. So I would also like to ask you to reflect a bit on this in relation to these barriers. So is it something that maybe is related to your experience, maybe not at all, but can you elaborate a bit on that, please?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I do see two systematic barriers which relate to everything you just mentioned. So the first one is leaders, decision makers who don't want to make a change and use placemaking and tactical urbanism as an excuse to do something and let it disappear after a while. And this is what I see mostly. So we're not sure we can do a bike lane. Let's try it with a pop-up bike lane. Then people are angry. Then it's easy to just back and return it. Sometimes you don't need an experiment. You just need to build a bike lane because that's the right thing to do. And you don't need to convince everybody that it's the right thing to do, because sometimes it's just you need a great leader like in Paris that just says that this is the thing to do and that's it. So that's the first barrier, is not really meaning to do it. And the second barrier is doing the experiments as sort of a tokenism, just in order to do something while telling people it's an experiment. And this touches what Anna said and Roland said. It is a little bit of, we call it an experiment because we don't want people to be angry that we do something top down. But actually all we want is to massage people, to let them feel that they have some say. But we are planning to keep it staying there forever. Right? I see a lot of cities doing that. I think unless we really understand the value of experiment, which is we try something together with people, we learn from the result, and then in the next one we will do something better, or we will maybe close it because it didn't work, or we will understand why it didn't work and do something else. We cannot make systematic change using experiments and placemaking. So that's a little bit for me what I see happening around the world.
Okay, thank you very much for this sharing these two quite straightforward points. So I think we can all learn from that.
And maybe I can add something to Lior's example. Yeah, because you just said that maybe we should not call it an experiment when it's already clear what the administration is going to do. And I have an interesting example from Berlin, because the administration said that they want to create a pedestrian zone in one area of Berlin, but they did it in a provisional way. So in a very easy way, the street was closed and it was already decided that it will become a pedestrian zone, but it was not at all decided at that point how it would look like. So, and for this, the whole neighborhood is integrated, and they can participate and also redesign the whole area. And I think that's a very good example to show what maybe also we have to do in a city for the transport transition, but then also to redesign the space together with the neighborhood. And then it's not this conflict of doing something and then maybe it's already decided from the beginning that it will last.
Thank you very much, Julia, for this addition. I would like to pick up now a question from the audience. It's quite long, but Roland, is directed to you and is related to your experience, because you have been working on public spaces for COVID and post-COVID use. And it also relates to the fact that indeed the pandemic has shown that public spaces are more important than ever, especially for city dwellers who do not have the luxury of a private balcony or garden, for instance. So looking back into what's now more than a year of confinement and working from home, what lessons have you learned from the pandemic when it comes to the design and use of public spaces, especially as part of co-creation and co-design?
What I've learned, well, I think that we just need more space available. That's clear, and I think we don't change our. So we didn't, as a planner, we didn't change our perspective, because that was also. I mean, we had the same ideas before. In Vienna, for example, it's clearly there is a clear guideline how much public space you have to construct per inhabitant. So it's I think that will not change. What I'm experiencing in two projects is one is an urban design we are doing in Vienna in a quite big aerial development with 1,000 inhabitants, a new development at the city fringe. But very dense and very urban, actually, with a ground floor zone. and the architects and the developers are shifting to build co-working spaces into the residential areas. So they are doing a lot of, mixed-use developments, much more. And we have another project in Maputo, in Mozambique, that we are just starting, a post-COVID recovery project where we work in informal settlements to create a linkage between informal settlements and the formal city for the better job connections. So enable active mobility from informal settlements to the formal city. And by doing so, create subcentralities or open community spaces for this, to mingle and to have actually one public space, because normally in informal settlements they are lacking public spaces. So we are doing quite different things as a response to COVID. Mm-hmm.
You're muted, Bahanur. Okay.
Can you hear me now? I think that connects a lot to the 15-minute city or local things or having everything mixed. I was always wondering who came up with the idea that we need residency areas where we don't have any possibility to work or to shop and so on. So I'm really happy that this is changing. And I'd like to ask also Lior, what kind of obvious things which we forgot, I would say, the human needs don't change so easily. It's just that certain things like traveling throughout the city to go to work was not possible. So we had to rethink how we distribute the place. So I would like to ask you, Lior, what kind of change in our designing planning did you observe, and what should stay and not go away with the pandemic?
Well, yeah, to keep it really short, because I think we all covered it. The human needs didn't change because, yeah, we all need to meet people. We are social animal. So the needs themselves didn't change. What changes the circumstances? We didn't need to travel to work. We were allowed to stay at home. Some of us actually didn't lose their job while doing that. I think it is. We saw what changed. I mean, we did more interventions in the neighborhoods, more places that people can go to. I have nothing to add besides the fact that I think that more non-urbanists saw it. More people talk about it. I see more articles. I see it in Israel. I see it in the Netherlands. More articles of people talking about, hey, why the public space outside my house is so dedicated to cars. And this is actually my only hope, that actually the regular people, the real people that don't spend all their days on webinars on urbanism, but actually live their life, actually started to notice it, and maybe we'll ask for more of those kind of interventions.
Thank you, Lior. In terms of placemaking and thinking ahead, learning points from the pandemic, the toolbox, what would you like to add, Anna? What do we have to concentrate more in the future? And what is the wish from us all? Where should we concentrate our focus and unite our forces?
Yeah, thanks, Bahadur. Well, that's a big question for us all. From my experience in this last couple of years, and also in placemaking, the toolbox that is underneath Placemaking Europe and worked on with Place City and our partners, we have all different types of tools. We have different categories thematically, such as seasonal tools, tools for children, tools for culture and heritage, but we also have types of tools that are on the process step of placemaking. So from the very early on of getting to know a place all the way to connecting with public developers to fuse in placemaking into development, place-led development. And specifically going forward with the tools, speaking to, I think Julia mentioned it, but also I think all of the other speakers mentioned that public health and the idea of human movement has been something that's been significantly stopped in the last year and a half. And going forward, I think it's important that our tools keep that in mind. So, of course, we've always put engaging the community at the forefront, but now specifically looking to a public health perspective with our tools. So how can we keep our residents of the city happy and healthy? That's something that it really excites me going forward, and I see as a very big need that goes into our human needs.
Thank you, Anna. Luca, what would you, what's your wish? How should it go from here? What did we learn which we should emphasize more and embrace as a very important learning point?
Yeah, I think a lot has been said, with which I agree, but maybe I stress this fact that that the pandemic has remember us that, you know, we are not just social beings, but that there is a very, very important, basic, essential physical dimension of that. So it has to be also physical interaction in physical space. And it also remember that we have bodies. In spite of all we can do in other ways, there is an incredible value and need, pleasure in using those bodies, in being outside, in experiencing the physical, the environment, you know. And these are this awareness that maybe we all had, and many people even theorize that is, like Lior said, is been a public awareness which we can build on. But again, it's very important to keep remembering that it will not be automatic. So there is a very strong possibility of it going back to what it was. And there's then the challenge, is to build on this, and it has to be a proactive effort. It's not going to happen by itself. So yes, we have to hope people will ask, but we cannot just wait for people to ask. You know, we have to engage them, give them voice, and, you know, and put this discussion out there somehow.
Thank you, Luca. I think what you said was quite strong, and maybe someone else also would like to react on that. But this statement, like, we have bodies, and we have been talking about urban spaces, public spaces for 1.5 hours almost. And it's interesting to see that indeed, like, without our bodies, like, what are actually public spaces? Now we are living in this public space, which is mostly digital, but then we also saw and learned from Anna that indeed with this digital dinner tool, for instance, they were trying to blend together the digital dimension with the physical one. So maybe I would like to ask you all as a group, if you have any reaction on this. I mean, how do you see maybe the evolvement of public spaces with or without our bodies? Like, how do you see that happening? Maybe Anna, as I called her, or someone else.
Yeah, sure. I can reflect on that. I think the future of public space is certainly going towards a trend of more digitalization. You know, the different types of technology that you can wear on your body for tracking your fitness on one level of the spectrum, to maybe QR codes about different routes in your neighborhood for a trail. And I don't think that the regulations we've had in place over the last 1.5 years will go away so quickly. I do think that digital tools and digital connection will be something that will continue, especially as we've seen that remote working is a concept that does work for, you know, maybe it's not the most ideal situation, but you can get by and not necessarily rent out an office for 30 different staff. So maybe you do have more remote working. So I think in that line, the future of work mixing with placemaking, it will definitely still include quite a bit of digital tools and resources.
Thank you, Anna. I don't know if anyone else would like to react to that, to these visionary ideas of public space without human bodies. If not, I will. Yeah, Roland. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe these things depend a little bit to each other. If we have more home office and more digital workspaces, maybe we can create the local public spaces more and better for us, and not having the local the public spaces in the central areas only, or in the bigger parks. So create this 5-minute city, not even 15, maybe 5-minute walking city with a strong public space also. And I think I think for me the most important thing is that we try to involve people as much as possible in the planning process, and not leaving anybody behind. That would be the most important thing. And I think that placemaking, that is also involving co-creation, co-production of ideas, urban ideas, that I think that comes together a little bit. And I think that is one of the most important issues. If we have this digital thing, that we need a very strong people-centered thing at the same time.
Yeah, many thanks for that. I will give the word to Bahanur if she has any additional remark, or because we are approaching the end. So,
so we have a new comment, I think, from Giovanni Pagano. And he's saying Stockholm is working on 1-minute city. So, Roland, there is more work to do also, Julia. So maybe the mobility will be so different than expected. Even we will need no lanes at all. I think it's very important to what Lior was saying, that we come back to the needs and not plan and adapt the cities according to our planning instruments, but go back, what do people need, and then say, okay, certain things do not work in this constellation anymore, so we have to adapt according to needs and not somehow work with those old instruments. I agree, of course, with what Roland and Anna said. We had this great idea of having this state park or city park, or places which you can only reach when you are mobile, where a lot of people come, and you have this proof that hundreds of people are gathering together. That proves that your place is great because so many people come there. But actually, that's not so much the human need for the public space per se. There is also the need just to go out with your dog, let your kid walk out of the house by themselves, give them the liberty, and give them the chance to connect with the city, to have memories about the city by themselves without the parents and so on. So if we really go back to the human needs and not so much our promotion tools, which in the first place perhaps dictated the planning instruments, we might have a chance. And for this, I think placemaking or tactical urbanism or thinking out of the box or just interacting with the people might be the right solution and approach. I enjoyed the talk a lot, and I think we should do more things together. I think it was great to hear the different opinions, but somehow we also have the common understanding what has to change. And I believe if a lot of people think, believe, and do something for the change, then it must be possible, because in the end, all the built environment is also a change from the former situation. So if that was possible, then also the positive things which we aim for should be possible. And yeah, this is all what I have to say about the event today. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you for coming. Thank you for discussing. Thank you, dear guests, for the questions and for all those points and experiences you shared with us. We will come back to you in July on the 7th on the topic of urban commons. It's somehow related, but we will explore with different guests, and stay tuned. We will be very, very happy to welcome you again and discuss with you, and see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.